So this is the lesson for 9-4, day 1. What we're dealing with today are a type of word problem. The type of word problem that we're dealing with today has legs, and hypotenuse, all right? You don't have to draw the pictures. I know that it says for all the word problems you must draw a picture. Those are the day 2 questions that you have to draw a picture for. The day 1 questions, it's really up to you whether you want to do that or not. Because we're dealing with the Pythagorean Theorem, you are still using the same formula that we use in every question in the entire chapter. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. About half of your questions you'll have to round to the nearest tenth. If you get a big long decimal, the other ones will be nice, neat whole numbers. So just as a reminder, when you have a right triangle, remember that your C side is your slanted side. It does not matter which side you pick for A or which side you pick for B, but the A and B sides make up the right angle of the triangle. Super important for today, you have to know that your C side is called the hypotenuse. You will be using that word in every single question today. The C side is the hypotenuse. The A and the B side are your legs. Why do they call them legs? I don't know. But these are your legs, your A and your B. Your C side, which is your slanted side, is always your hypotenuse. They never differentiate between like a smaller leg and a bigger leg or anything like that. It's just leg and leg. It doesn't matter A or B. So this is what a typical question looks like today. You're given a leg, you have to find the hypotenuse. If you wanted to draw a picture for this one, we would have our right triangle. It says that one leg is 51, one leg is 140. It doesn't matter which one you pick for which, but the two sides that make up the right angle, the side and the bottom would be 51 and 140. You're looking for the hypotenuse, so that is your x. So if you think back to previous lessons, all right, why is this not working? If you think back to previous lessons, that it looks like you're solving for the C side now. So this would be your A, this could be your B, and your C side is the slanted side. So you're going to use the formula A squared plus B squared equals C squared. If you don't want to use the formula, what I like to do on these type of problems, you know that your legs are your A and your B. So this could be A, this could be B, and we're looking for the hypotenuse, which is your C. So instead of A squared, we're going to fill in what we know. Instead of A squared, we're going to have 51 squared. Instead of B squared, it is 140 squared. And instead of C squared, it is X squared. We always want to try and get the letter all by itself. To get this x squared all by itself, we have to add these two things together. Remember, you can't just add them together and say, oh, it's 191 squared. You have to follow order of operations, so you have to type it into the calculator exactly how it says. 51 squared plus 140 squared. You can't do 191 squared. It doesn't work that way. When we do 51 squared plus 140 squared, we get 22,201 equals x squared. Now, we don't want x squared. We want to know what x is. The very last step in every single question is to take the square root, because we want to know what x is, not what x squared is. Remember, the way that you type in a square root into these school calculators, you have to hit the second button, which is in that upper left-hand corner, then the x squared button, which is really your square root button, then 22,201, and hit equals. If you go to use a laptop or the calculator on a device, you might see this button instead. This is the square root button on a laptop or a device. It is the square root symbol, the little check mark deal, with an X and a 2, all right? And with these, you actually have to type it backwards when you use a school device. You have to type in the number first, then that square root button. So it all depends on what device you're using. If you're using a calculator, what kind of calculator. Sometimes you type in the square root symbol first and then the number. Sometimes the number first, then the square root symbol. If you go to use a phone, you might not see the check mark at all. You might see SQRT. SQRT stands for square root. Again, on some phones, you have to type in the number first and then the SQRT. On other phones, you have to type in the SQRT first and then the number. So you just have to figure out how your calculator works. Anyway, the square root of 22,201 is 149. And that's your final answer. Let's take a look at the next one. Now, this one comes from yesterday's lesson because for this one, we're either going to be finding the A or the B side. If you wanted to draw a picture, here's our right triangle. One of the legs is 90. The hypotenuse is 100. We're finding the other leg. So we're finding this other leg there. Doesn't matter what you pick for your A and your B, but your legs have to be your A and your B. Your hypotenuse is always your C side. If you're doing it from the picture, this could be your A, this could be your B, and your 100 has to be your C. We're going to take and sub it into the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Sub in what we know. Instead of A squared, we have 90 squared. Instead of B squared, that's what we're looking for. So that's going to be X squared. And instead of C squared, you're going to have 100 squared. Now, this is different from the previous problem. In the previous problem, we were looking for the C side. So we had to add together the two numbers before taking the square root. Whenever you're looking for the A or the B side, in order to get this X squared all by itself, we need to subtract the two numbers first. So if you're looking for C, you're going to add together the numbers and then take the square root. If you're looking for A or for B, you subtract the numbers and then take the square root. 90 squared is 90 times 90, which is 8,100. Bring down your plus sign, bring down your X squared, bring down your equal sign. 100 squared is 100 times 100, which is 10,000. Now it's just like solving a one-step equation. We're trying to get the X squared all by itself. So minus 8,100 minus 8,100. If you don't know which number to subtract by, you're always in these questions going to be doing the bigger number minus the smaller number. You can't do the smaller minus the bigger because then you're going to get a negative. We don't have any negatives in any of these problems. You can't because we're looking for how long something is. Something can't have a negative length. So you're not going to have any negatives. So it's always the bigger number minus the smaller number. 10,000 minus 8,100 is 1,900. The last step in every single question is to take the square root. The square root of 1,900, when you type it into the calculator, remember these school calculators, you're going to hit the second button, then the X squared button, which is really your square root, then 1,900 and hit equals. On a school device or a laptop computer, you would type in 1,900, then hit this button, which is the square root button. Square root of 1,900, big, long, ugly decimal, 43.588,98944. We want to round to the nearest tenth. That's what the directions will say. The 5 is in the tenths place. We need to look at the number after it. That number is 5 or higher, so that means this is going to round up to be 43.6. Go ahead and try the last one on your own. Yes, these are decimals. They work the same exact way. Go ahead and try this last one on your own, please. You're given a leg, you're given the hypotenuse, you need to find the other leg. Your hypotenuse is always your C side. Doesn't matter which leg you pick for A or which leg you pick for B. So sub the numbers into the formula. Instead of A squared, I have 13.1 squared. B squared is what I'm looking for. And C is 94.3. We need to try and get this x squared all by itself. Anytime that you're solving for one of the legs, you have to square the numbers and then subtract before taking the square root. 13.1 squared is 171.61. Bring down your plus sign, bring down your x squared. 94.3 is 8,892.49. We need to try and get that x squared all by itself. To get that x squared all by itself, we need to get rid of the 171 by subtracting 171.61 from both sides. That way this 171 cancels out, and now we have the x squared all by itself. When you subtract 8892 minus 171, you get 8,720.88. The last step in every single question is to take the square root. So you're going to type in second button, the x squared button, which is really your square root, and then 8720.88. Again, on a device, on a laptop, you're going to type the number in first, then hit the square root symbol. And you would get an answer of 93.385652. You're rounding your answer to the nearest tenth. The 3 is in the 10th spot. You need to look at the number after it. That number after it is 5 or higher. So we're going to round up to be 93.4. So again, your legs are your A and your B side. Your hypotenuse is your C side. If you're solving for the C, you have to add together the numbers before taking the square root. If you're solving for the A or the B side, your legs, you have to square the numbers, subtract them, and then take the square root.